My name is Claire Donovan. I'm 31 years old, and 3 weeks ago, my own family tried to humiliate me at my wedding. Not quietly, not privately, but in front of 187 guests, a live band, and a reception hall I had personally paid for. And the worst part? They thought I would just smile, stay quiet, and let them take the credit. But they forgot something important about me. I'm the one who paid for the entire wedding. The venue, the catering, the flowers, even the champagne they were about to raise in a toast, pretending they made it all happen. And when I realized what they had planned, I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I simply made one phone call that turned their perfect celebration into a disaster. But before I tell you what I did and why the reception nearly collapsed before the first dance, I want to ask you something. If your own family tried to humiliate you at your wedding, would you keep the peace? Or would you make them regret it? Tell me in the comments, because what happened next still divides people. Setup. I grew up in a small town outside Denver. Nothing fancy, just the kind of place where everyone knows everyone, and everyone knows your business. My parents, Robert and Diane Donovan, were the type of people who cared a lot about appearances. Not success, not happiness, just appearances. My younger sister, Emily, was always the favorite. She was charming, bubbly, and good at making people laugh. I was the opposite. Quiet, driven, the serious one. The one who left town at 18, built a career in finance, and slowly worked my way up to being a partner at a consulting firm. Over the years, my parents developed a strange habit. Whenever someone asked about my success, they would smile proudly, but somehow make it sound like they were responsible for it. I ignored it, because that's what the responsible one does. You keep the peace. You don't start fights. You just keep helping. So when I got engaged to my fiancé, Daniel, last year, I decided to do something generous. Daniel and I could have had a small wedding, something simple, but my parents immediately started talking about a proper celebration, the kind with chandeliers, a ballroom, a 5-course dinner. My mom kept saying things like, "People will be talking about this wedding for years," and eventually I said the sentence that would come back to haunt me. "Fine. I'll pay for it." At the time, I meant it as a gift. I had the money, and I thought it would make my parents happy. What I didn't realize was that they weren't just excited about the wedding, they were excited about taking credit for it. The betrayal. 3 weeks before the wedding, my best friend Natalie called me late at night. Her voice sounded strange. "Claire, I need to ask you something." "Sure," I said. "What's up?" There was a pause. Then she asked a question that made my stomach drop. "Why aren't you giving the welcome speech at your own wedding?" I blinked. "What do you mean?" "Well, your mom told people that she and your dad are hosting the wedding." I laughed. At first, I honestly thought Natalie misunderstood. "My parents aren't hosting," I said. "I am." Another pause. Then Natalie said something that made my blood run cold. "Claire, that's not what they're telling people." She sent me a screenshot. It was from a group chat with several relatives, and the message from my mom said, "We're so excited to host Claire and Daniel's wedding. After all the work we've done planning it, we can't wait for everyone to see what we put together." My heart started pounding, because that wasn't just exaggeration. That was a lie, a big one. And when I kept reading the messages, it got worse. My sister Emily had replied with laughing emojis and wrote, "Mom and Dad deserve the credit. Claire's too busy with work to care about weddings anyway." That was the moment something inside me snapped. But here's the crazy part. That wasn't even the worst thing they planned to do. The real humiliation? That was waiting for me on the actual wedding day. And when I found out what it was, I realized my family didn't just want credit. They wanted the spotlight, even if it meant pushing the bride out of it. Before I tell you what they planned to do at the reception, the part that made me pick up the phone and cancel something very important, let me ask you something. If your own family tried to humiliate you at your wedding, would you keep the peace or would you make them regret it? Tell me in the comments, because what happened next still divides people. But the screenshot Natalie sent me kept bothering me, not just because my parents were lying, but because the messages kept going, and the more I read, it got worse. My mom wrote another message a few minutes later. "We're planning a special toast during the reception to explain how much work we put into making Claire's wedding happen." My chest tightened. Explain how much work they put in? I had personally paid every single invoice. The venue deposit, the $18,000 catering bill, the photographer, the band, even the custom flower arrangements my mom insisted we needed. But apparently, my parents were about to stand up in front of everyone and pretend that they were the hosts. At first, I tried to stay calm. I told myself maybe it was just my mom exaggerating again. But 2 days later, things got worse because Emily called me, and the moment she started talking, I knew something was off. "Hey, Claire," she said casually. "Just checking, you're still okay with the toast at the reception, right?" I frowned. What toast? There was a pause on the line. Then Emily said something that made my stomach twist. "You know, Mom and Dad's speech." I sat up straight. "What speech?" Emily sounded surprised. "Oh, I thought you knew," she hesitated. "Mom wants to thank everyone for supporting the wedding and explain how hard they worked planning everything." That's when I realized something. My parents weren't just lying to relatives. They had actually planned a full speech at the reception, claiming they organized the entire wedding. And suddenly, a lot of things started making sense, like why my mom kept insisting on controlling the microphone schedule, or why she kept asking the DJ about announcement timing. I took a slow breath. "Emily," I said carefully, "who told you Mom and Dad planned this wedding?" She laughed. Everyone knows that." Then she said something that hit me like a punch to the chest. "Claire, come on. You're not the type to care about weddings anyway. You barely even helped plan it." I almost dropped the phone. Barely helped? I had spent 6 months coordinating vendors. I had taken calls between meetings at work. I had reviewed contracts at midnight. But to Emily, and apparently the rest of my family, I was just the person showing up in the dress. And that was the moment something inside me changed. Because this wasn't just about credit anymore. It was about respect. And my family had decided I didn't deserve any. So I decided something too. I wasn't going to argue with them. I wasn't going to start a family fight 2 weeks before the wedding. Instead, I was going to let them do exactly what they planned. Stand up in front of everyone, take the microphone, smile proudly, and claim they paid for the entire wedding. But when they finished their speech, that's when everything would fall apart. Because there was one small detail my parents didn't know. Every vendor at the wedding had a contract with my name on it, and every one of those contracts had my phone number. So the night before the wedding, I made a quiet decision. If my parents wanted to take credit for the wedding, then they could also take responsibility for it, financially, which meant that at exactly 7:30 p.m., right after their big speech, a few very important services were going to require immediate payment confirmation from the people who claimed they paid for everything. And trust me, the reaction from my parents when that happened, it's something I'll never forget. But before we got to the moment the reception started falling apart, something unexpected happened the morning of the wedding, something that made my revenge plan even more satisfying, because someone else accidentally revealed just how far my parents were willing to go to steal the spotlight. And when I heard that conversation, the morning of the wedding started quietly, too quietly. I woke up in the bridal suite at the hotel around 7:15 a.m., staring at the ceiling, feeling that strange mix of excitement and nerves every bride talks about. But underneath it all, there was something else, a secret, because I knew something no one else at that wedding knew. By the end of the night, my parents' little performance was going to collapse, and they had no idea. Around 9 a.m., my bridesmaids arrived. Hairstylists, makeup artists, the photographer. Suddenly, the suite was full of laughter, curling irons, and champagne glasses. Natalie walked over and whispered, "You okay?" I smiled. "I'm perfect." And technically, that wasn't a lie, because the revenge plan was already in motion. The night before, I had called every vendor involved in the reception, the caterer, the DJ, the lighting crew, the bar service, not to cancel anything, just to change one small instruction. If anyone besides me claimed they were the host or payer of the wedding, they were to politely ask that person for payment verification before continuing service. Simple, professional, and devastating. But the moment I knew the plan would really work came around 11:30 that morning. I had stepped out of the suite to grab something from the hallway. That's when I heard voices around the corner. My mom and Emily. They were talking. Quietly, but not quietly enough. I froze when I heard my name. Emily laughed softly. "Mom, are you really going to say you paid for the whole wedding?"
My mom sighed dramatically. "Of course I am." Emily chuckled. "Claire's going to freak out." Then my mom said something that made my hands clench. "She won't say anything," she said confidently. "She never does." There was a short pause. Then she added the line that sealed their fate. "Besides, people need to know this wedding happened because of us." I stood there in the hallway, completely still, because in that moment, everything became clear. They weren't embarrassed about lying. They were counting on me staying quiet, counting on the same pattern that had existed my entire life. Claire works hard, Claire pays for things, Claire keeps the peace, while everyone else takes the credit. Except this time, that wasn't going to happen. The reception. By 6 p.m., the ballroom looked incredible. Crystal chandeliers glowed over the dance floor. The band played soft jazz near the stage, and guests filled the tables, laughing and drinking champagne. Daniel squeezed my hand. "Everything's perfect," he whispered. I smiled. "Oh, it's about to get interesting." The ceremony went beautifully, and for a while, everything seemed normal. Dinner started, guests chatted happily, the band played. Then around 7:25 p.m., my mom stood up. She walked confidently toward the microphone near the stage. My dad followed beside her. Emily looked excited. Natalie leaned toward me. "Is this it?" she whispered. I nodded slowly. "Oh yeah." My mom tapped the microphone. The room quieted. She smiled proudly at the crowd. "Good evening, everyone." A few guests clapped politely. Then she began. "We're so happy all of you could join us tonight." My stomach twisted slightly, because I knew exactly what was coming. My mom lifted her glass. "This wedding has been such a labor of love for our family." I saw Natalie roll her eyes. Then my mom continued. "We spent months planning every detail to make tonight special for Claire and Daniel." Several relatives nodded approvingly, and then she said the line she had clearly practiced. "We were honored to host this beautiful celebration for our daughter." A few guests applauded, and that was the moment. I quietly checked the time on my phone, 7:30 p.m. exactly. 10 seconds later, the first domino fell. Across the room, the bar manager walked directly toward my parents. At first, no one noticed, but when he leaned down and whispered something to my dad's smile vanished completely, and the look on his face, pure panic, because the manager had just asked a very simple question. If they were hosting the wedding, could they please confirm payment for the bar service? And that was just the beginning, because in the next 60 seconds, 3 more vendors were about to ask the same question, right in front of everyone. The bar manager wasn't loud, he didn't cause a scene. He simply leaned toward my dad and spoke quietly, but the effect was immediate. I watched my dad's expression change in real time. First confusion, then embarrassment, then something very close to panic. My mom was still holding the microphone, smiling proudly at the room, and we were so happy to make this night possible for Claire and Daniel. She stopped mid-sentence because my dad suddenly grabbed her arm. "Diane, hold on." The room grew awkwardly quiet. My mom frowned. "What?" My dad leaned close and whispered something. I couldn't hear the exact words, but I saw her face go pale. Then the bar manager spoke again, a little louder this time. "Sir, we just need confirmation for the bar service account." Several guests turned their heads. My mom forced a laugh into the microphone. "Oh, there must be some confusion." But the manager didn't laugh. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he said politely. "Our contract requires payment confirmation from the host." A murmur spread across the room. My mom's smile started to crack. "Well, of course it's paid." The manager nodded politely. "Perfect."
If you could just confirm the payment method. My dad looked like someone had just dropped him into ice water because he didn't know. He had no idea. And right then, the second domino fell. Across the ballroom, the catering coordinator walked toward them, clipboard in hand. She stopped beside the bar manager. "Excuse me," she said calmly, "we also need confirmation regarding the final catering balance." Now people were definitely watching. My aunt leaned toward another relative and whispered something. Emily looked confused. My mom lowered the microphone slowly. "Robert, what's happening?" My dad whispered harshly. "I thought you handled this." My mom snapped back quietly. "I thought you did." But before they could argue further, the DJ walked over. Then the lighting technician. 4 vendors now stood politely beside them, all asking the same question. If they were hosting the wedding, they needed confirmation for the outstanding balances. The room was silent. Every guest was watching. My mom looked around nervously. Then her eyes landed on me, standing calmly at my table, holding my champagne glass. She walked toward me quickly, heels clicking on the floor. "Claire," she hissed quietly, "what did you do?" I tilted my head slightly. "What do you mean?" Her voice dropped even lower. "Why are the vendors asking us for payment?" I took a small sip of champagne. "Well," I said calmly, "you told everyone you were hosting the wedding." She stared at me. "You set this up." I shrugged slightly. "I just wanted to make sure the right people were paying." Her face flushed red. "Claire, stop this. Tell them you paid." That's when I said the line I had been waiting all night to say. "Oh, I will." I stood up slowly, walked toward the microphone, and gently took it from her hand. The room went completely silent. 187 guests watching. I smiled politely. "Hi, everyone." A few people laughed nervously. I took a breath. I just wanted to clear up a small misunderstanding. I glanced toward my parents, then back to the crowd. My parents just said they hosted this wedding. A few guests nodded. Then I added calmly, "But actually, I paid for everything." The room erupted in whispers. My mom looked like she might faint. My dad stared at the floor. I continued speaking. "Every vendor here has a contract with my name on it." I gestured toward the vendors standing nearby. They were just confused when the hosts suddenly changed. A few people chuckled. Then someone at the back clapped, slowly. Then a few more joined, and suddenly the tension in the room broke. My mom grabbed my arm. "Claire, stop!" But I gently pulled away. Then I said the final line. "If my parents would like to host the wedding," I smiled sweetly, "they're more than welcome to pay for it." The room burst into laughter. Even the band members were smiling. My dad looked like he wanted to disappear, and my sister Emily, she wouldn't even look at me. But the best part came 30 minutes later, because when the music started again and the bar reopened, the vendors quietly came over to thank me for handling everything so professionally. And the rest of the night, it was perfect, but my parents never touched the microphone again. Aftermath. The next morning, my mom sent me a long message. She said I embarrassed them. She said I ruined their moment. But honestly, I don't regret a single second, because for the first time in my life, my family learned something important. Respect goes both ways, and sometimes the quiet one in the family isn't weak. They're just waiting for the right moment. Comment question. Engagement. Now I'm curious what you think. If your family tried to take credit for your wedding, would you have exposed them like this, or would you have kept the peace? Let me know in the comments, because Daniel still says my revenge was too polite, and honestly, he might be right.